third of 24 seminars throughout the year. Some of you are new here, and I'm super excited. Some of you that weren't here the past 2 weeks, our first topic was about the best kept secret to optimal health. We basically went over the nervous system and how maintenance of the spine and nervous system is extremely important to overall health. That was the first week, and then the last week we talked about the actual brain. We talked about different areas of the brain and how that controls your function. And we made it pretty fun. We were talking about the right and left side of the brain, what side talks about what side does what control, and other side does another control. So today we're going to venture into emotional health. Because when you think about health, really the best way to maintain your health is to have a well-rounded balance in all areas of your life. So you want to look at your physical aspect of your life, you want to look at your metabolic or your dietary lifestyle, and you also want to look at your emotional lifestyle. If you have if you're strong in all three of those areas, then you know that that's true optimal health. You know, if you're weak in any of those areas, there's no way you can be at the full potential of your health. So today we're going to be jumping into a little bit more of the emotional aspect of healthcare. So what are we going to talk about today? What's on the agenda? What I want to do is first discuss the three major stresses in life. I think I'd be safe to say that at some point we've all been stressed a little bit. Yeah. Exactly, but there's different areas of stress that affect us differently, and we're going to go over that today. Then we want to understand how all of those areas or those stresses affect your physical health. What does it do to your physical body? Then we're going to understand how our emotions are related to our health. And then we're going to give some practical tips for you to take home so you can have optimal health. Everybody ready? Ready to have some fun? Okay, perfect. So stress. We talked about three areas that we're going to go over. Does anybody want to guess what three areas they could be? There's different stressors in our life. What do you think they could be? Anybody?
Money.
Money, okay. Hey, what's going on? Good. You didn't really miss much. We just went over a little bit of an introduction. Perfect. You sit there, right? Yeah. Thank you. So we're basically going over stress right now. There's three areas of stress that we're about to go over. So money is a stressor. That's more stress for, our emotional health. Anything else? Anybody else want to try? Work, exactly. So that could be emotional, that could be physical, that could be a different array of things. Now you guys are giving specific examples instead of the generalized, and that's what we're going to go over. So we have three major stresses. One is physical stress. Two is chemical stress. And three is emotional stress. That's why I say when you look at all three areas of your life, you can be in tip-top, perfect physical shape, but at home you may have a very tough lifestyle and you have a lot of emotional stuff going on at home, and you can't physically be 100% healthy. Is 100% health really possible? Who knows, but I would rather get as close to that as possible than to have some areas of our life that are missing that optimal health. So what are some physical stresses? Anybody want to try to give some examples of what physical stress is?
Carrying things?
Yeah, so carrying things the wrong way on your back, like book bags or stuff like that.
Weight gain?
Exactly, weight gain, obesity, that's physical stress. Anybody else want to try? Okay. So that's any stress that's on our physical body. That could be from the following things. It could be from exercise, lack of or too much. Exercise is a stress on our body. If you do too much of it, it can be damaging. If you don't do enough, it can be damaging. So finding that good balance of exercise is really where you get the most benefit. There's some people out there that are on the lazier side and they don't want to do any exercise. Some people out there that are like obsessed with it, they're exerciseaholics, and they're there 7 times a week doing 3 hours of cardio and 2 hours of weight training, and they're damaging their body in the long run. So finding that good balance is really where the optimal health will come from. Our posture is a physical stress. Our posture is our window to our spine. So the worse that our posture is, the worse we're going to have stress on our spine, the worse we're going to have stress on our nervous system, the worse we're going to have in our health care. That's kind of how the cycle goes. So Obesity, we already mentioned that one. Being heavier, unfortunately, is a big stress, not only on your spine, but on every area of your body as well. And you also want to talk about ergonomics. You were talking about work before. We want to talk about how we sit at our desk. That's a physical stress. If you sit at a desk all day, you want to make sure, are you sitting at your desk in the right way? You know, for instance, if you sit at a computer, you want to make sure that when you're sitting there, that the monitor of your computer is about eye level. And if it's not eye level, you want it to go a little bit higher if it's not eye level. But if you go lower than eye level, now you're enforcing your body every day to look down like this, and you're forcing your posture forward, and now that's how you start to lose that normal upright posture. You know, when you sit at your desk, are you sitting with your feet flat on the floor? Or is your chair too high up and it's making your feet off the ground? That's not good ergonomics as well. So those are some physical stresses that would be a part of the body as well. You want to look at home. How do you sleep? How do you watch TV? Are you lying on your couch with your head propped up like this on the side, you know, while you're watching TV? That's another stress that would be on the body. And then in your car, how are you driving? You know, are you driving, trying to be cool, or are you driving like this all day long? You know, or are you sitting upright with your head straight forward? These are all physical stresses on the body that in turn will cause physical stress and change the way your body functions. So chemical stress. What do you think chemical stress is? Medicine is a chemical stress, exactly. It's anything that we ingest in our body. So stress that's ingested in our body. It could be from... Oh, come on in.
Doc, would you include vitamins and things like that as
a stressor?
As a chemical stress?
Yes and no. I mean, ideally, vitamins are supposed to be good for us, but if you're taking too much vitamins, it can be damaging. So we're talking about stress in more of a bad way than a good way. So supplementation is good if you have the right amount, but some people don't know that amount, so they could put too much of a certain vitamin inside them and get toxicity. So that would be a stressor as well. So we have food is a stressor. What we put in our body, our diet is extremely important. You know, that's something that a lot of us disregard. We don't realize how much what we put in our body affects our overall health. And every time you put that thing in that food that may not be as good for you in the mouth, there's going to be a negative effect. Maybe not now, but in the long term. And sometimes we have this mentality that we're invincible, that we believe right now that, oh, we can never get hurt, but we don't realize that the things that we do now are going to affect us down the road. Drugs, illegal drugs and legal drugs are all a stressor as well. You know, so smoking, prescription drugs, those are all chemical stresses. Alcohol, that's a chemical stress as well. As much as some of us may like to do that once in a while to get loose, but you're a real bummer.
You're a real bummer.
Hey, I got to give you the information. What you do with it is what you guys do at home. But I got to give the information. And then there's also chemical stresses from the environment. You may not always think about this, but everybody always talks about pollution. Pollution is a chemical stress. You know, if you live around a factory, or you live close to somewhere that's a factory, disease is higher in those type of areas than if you're in more of a cleaner area. You know, I think they say Elmwood Park, there's a, what is it, Markow? Yeah. Has Markow, and they believe that the people that lived in that area, a few of them ended up having myasthenia gravis, which is a muscular disorder. And it was just ironic that they lived right near the Markow, which is a huge plant. So that stress is from the environment. That can be from pollution and from factories. So that's the chemical stresses. And now we got to jump over to the emotional stress. Because in my opinion, that's one of the most overlooked stress on the body. We don't realize how we think, how it affects our body. So that's why I put a talk together about actual emotional health and how to become as optimally healthy in our emotional life as possible. So how we think and how we deal with our emotions has an overwhelming effect on our overall health. The more stress from life that isn't dealt with ideally, the more stress we have on our nervous system, which in turn is going to have more declining in our health. That's how that cycle goes. We're going to do a lot of cycles in today's class, because it gives you a better understanding on how this could cause this, which will cause this, which will cause this. So we're going to do that a couple times today. So the stress response, so we keep talking about stress. Our body has a response to stress. There's good stresses and there are bad stresses, and there should be a good balance of it. Sometimes we have too much stress, and more negative effects could happen. So we call it the fight or flight response. The fight or flight response. It's when our sympathetic nervous system gets too wound up. It's called. So the best way to think about this is if a tiger was to run in this room, every symptom that you feel is a sympathetic response. So let's think about some of the things that would happen. If a tiger ran in this room, what are some of the things that you're going to feel?
I'm going to run.
But what are some physical things you're going to feel? I mean, you're going to have to feel, but what?
Your adrenaline.
Yeah, your adrenaline's going to kick in, your heart rate's going to increase, your blood pressure's going to increase.
Your bladder's going to get wet.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to start, you're sweating. So these are the things that increase. Heart rate, blood pressure, your sweat glands, so you start to sweat a little bit more. Your cholesterol rises, your cortisol rises. You have more adrenaline, your blood sugar shoots up. Your sensory system shoots up, because you got to think about it. If we have a tiger chasing us, you want every single sense in your body to be on top, right? You want to be able to hear them, you want to be able to see them. You want to be able to do all that, so all your senses are shut up. Your clotting factors, because you don't want to clot at that moment. So, and anxiety and depression, those are things that are going to start to happen when you have too much excitability or too much of a fight or flight response. So if you think about it, some of these symptoms are, let's call them disorders, correct? People have high blood pressure all the time. People have high cholesterol all the time. People have blood sugar fluctuations. They never think that that could be due to a lot of stress. You know, you got to look at that area of your life to see what area is stressed. Is it your emotional state? Is it your physical state? Is it your chemical? And that's where chiropractic and this whole chiropractic lifestyle of balance really helps you. But if we have increases of things, we also have to have decreases, correct? So we have decreases of, so our blood now goes from our organs out to our muscles because we want to run away and get the heck away from that tiger. So if we have blood more in our muscles and not in our organs, what does that decrease? One of the things in this area. Digestion. So now we're not digesting our food very well. So people who have bad digestion or don't digest very well could be high stress. The kidney function, sexual function, our growth is stunted when we have too much stress. Immune function, people that are always sick, could be that they have a lot of stress in their life. The ability to concentrate, you know, people in school or people at work, you know, they can't concentrate because they have so much on their mind because they're having that stress. So the reason why I started like this about stress is because we need to have that foundation. You know, in order to build a good house, you have to have a good foundation. So this is like giving you that foundation of stress and what that does to the body, because now we're going to start to jump into more emotional stress. So the neurology of thought. Our thoughts, whether they're positive or negative, are under control of our nervous system, more specifically the brain. So the nervous system, if you guys don't understand, is your brain, your spinal cord, and all the spinal nerves that go out to the rest of your body. That controls every single part of your body, and one of them is your thoughts. So we can be, quote-unquote, wired to think negative and positively based on our neurological imbalance that we have in the brain. Is that pretty crazy? So you could be thinking negatively because of something that's neurologically going on. So the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain thinks differently. The right side of the brain thinks about more negative things. It's your cautious side of the brain, so it's going to be more negative in its thoughts. Where the left side of the brain has more positive thoughts. They're going to be the thing that wants to go explore, wants to go learn new things. So when you have a good balance, you're going to have that good balance of thoughts. You're not going to have too much negative thoughts, you're not going to have too much positive thoughts. But sometimes, whether it's from physical stress, chemical stress, emotional stress, we can start to imbalance that nervous system. And now we can have too much function, say, on the right side of the brain compared to the left side of the brain. And if you're starting to think negatively and you're starting to have negative thoughts, what disorder would that be considered? Depression, exactly. They've done research that they start to see that people that are clinically depressed or that have more depressive type symptoms have stronger right brain function, weaker left brain function. It's pretty crazy, right? And the opposite would happen, you know, if they had decreased left brain function and more, sorry, the other way around. Decreased right brain function, more left brain function, it would be the opposite. They'd be more the happier person, the one that you can never get them to think negatively. So that can show that there's that imbalance, and that can be a cause to the way that we think. So now we have another cycle. I said we're going to go through a couple cycles. The nervous system, when it gets imbalanced, when you have imbalances in the nervous system, it affects your emotional state. Like I just said, if you're going to be having an imbalance where you're starting to think more negatively, it's going to affect the way you think. So here's our cycle. So we have an imbalanced nervous system. Now that imbalanced nervous system is not allowing us to balance our emotional state. So now we don't have the ability to deal with the stressors optimally, which then increases our stress, which then increases the stress response, which causes more of an imbalance in the nervous system, and so on and so on. So now you have this cycle that just keeps getting worse and worse if we don't take care of it. Food for thought. This is actually something I read today. I was on the computer and I read this in an article that from Facebook. Recent research that suggests that the foods that you eat affect your mood. Anybody know that? Sometimes you eat something and it makes you really depressed. Sometimes you eat something that makes you really happy. So it affects the way you think. So then we have to talk about food allergies or food intolerances or sensitivities. Now a food allergy is the thing that everybody knows about, when you talk about allergies. Those are the ones like the peanut allergies or something where if you have it, you start to swell up or your throat starts to close. That's what we call an allergy. That's like a hypersensitivity to something. You can have a food allergy, which most of us know about because we unfortunately had something happen to let us see that. But then there's what's called food intolerances or food sensitivities, which are not as what's the word I'm looking for? Not as aggressive as the food allergies. Those are the ones that you eat, and maybe when you eat it, you get a headache. Or maybe when you eat it, you have to go to the bathroom. Now we think, oh, it's just, I have a headache or I should go to the bathroom, but it could be from that food. So that could be a signal from your body that you're sensitive to that food. The problem is, the more you're eating that, the more you're going to cause the stomach to have more inflammation, and now you're going to change the way that your stomach functions, and then which in turn changes the way that your brain functions. Because you can't have a good brain without a good gut, you can't have a good gut without a good brain. It's kind of another cycle in there. So let's talk about serotonin. That's your happy hormone. We have these hormones in our brain that bring signals back, from one part of the brain to the other. We have dopamine and we have serotonin is two of the major ones you've probably heard of throughout your life. Serotonin is our happy one. That's the things that we want to have more of in our body. Here's one problem. 90% of that is produced in our stomach. Although it's a hormone that helps out with the brain, it's produced in your stomach. So if you have a ton of inflammation in your stomach and you don't have good gut function, you're not going to have good secretion of serotonin, which now you're going to have more symptoms of depression. And that's one of the things that I read today, is that they're starting to link abnormal gut function to depression. And if you have depressive type symptoms, if you clean up your diet and you get rid of that inflammation in your stomach, they say that the depression starts to go away. It's pretty crazy, right? So this is what happens. We have those food intolerances. Here's your cycle again. We have gut inflammation, then we have decreased production of serotonin, and then we have an increased risk of depression. That's how that works. So cleaning up, and this is why I named it food for thought, because literally the food that you put in your body is going to change the way you think. So understanding what is good and bad for your body is a step forward in getting that emotional health back towards normal.
Doc, excuse me, what do you mean by gut function? The digestive system?
Yeah,
the way you digest
whenever I say the word gut, I mean digestive system. And yeah, the way that your digestive system works. So the things you put in your body are going to either have a positive or negative effect on your body. So sometimes people could be sensitive to the foods that they eat. So for instance, one of the ones you're probably aware of is dairy. Like when people are sensitive to dairy in their stomach, they usually have to go to the bathroom like right after they have dairy or something like that. That's one common thing, that would be a sensitivity to a food. And that would cause a lot of inflammation in the stomach. Just like you get inflammation in any other part of your body, if you injure your arm, it's going to start to inflame to protect it. Same thing, if you injure your stomach, you're going to get inflammation in the gut. And that's going to change the way the hormone production is. It's going to change the way your body functions in a whole. Make sense?
Yeah.
Got it? Anybody else on that one? Perfect. So here's some tips for us. Be aware of what reality is versus your story. And this is huge. This is what I always talk about when people talk about their emotional state, is getting to grips on what really happened compared to what your interpretation of what really happened was. So for instance, let's just say that you have a date with a guy or a girl, and you're in the beginning of the relationship, and you went out on the first date, and he or she told you he was going to call you the next day, and they didn't call you. Now, in reality, all they did is they didn't call you. But what many of us start to do is we start to say, oh my God, he doesn't like me, or she doesn't like me. Oh my God, what did I do wrong? Was I not good enough for them? You know, and you create this story in your head that is adding stress to your body, and that's something that could be controlled by you, by thinking differently. So in reality, all that happened was that person didn't call you, and it may be because they got out of work late, or it may be because their phone was off. You know, you don't know the reason why, but you're creating this story in your head that makes you freak out, and now like this emotional state is so stressed, and now all those symptoms are going to start to happen. So being aware of what reality is versus what you're thinking is reality. So a good way to kind of get past that is when you're in a situation where you're stressed, like whether it's in an argument with a significant other or something, just take a step back and just think like, okay, what was physically said right there? You know, what words physically came out of the mouth compared to what am I making those words mean? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And not a lot of people think like that. You know, and that's where people can make their emotional health just go haywire, because we create these stories inside of us. You know, and we start from when we're this big, and it goes all the way till, you know, we're older. And unfortunately, you know, when we're young and it happens, that's what sets us up to think like that for the rest of our life. So that's some powerful stuff, and if you could start to become aware of that and just think in your head, like, all right, this really didn't happen. I might be making this, you know, making this worse than it already is. This may sound, you know, look harder than it is, but think positive and be optimistic. You know, think of the glass is half empty or half full. You know, always trying to have that optimistic essence.
How can you do that if you're more right than
Well, one of the things that you want to know about that is what's causing those imbalances. So that's something that I would always recommend getting checked out and trying to fix that, because any imbalances that we have could be corrected. So we don't usually know what side we are unless we get a full evaluation. But yeah, you would definitely want to do some type of therapy, whether it's chiropractic, neurology, something like that, to help balance out those imbalances. You know, and then the other areas you want to look at is the dietary lifestyle. See if there's any intolerances that are causing your system to go crazy. So yeah, it's tough. It's a challenge, and I always say that healthcare is an everyday thing. It's not something that you temporarily, you know, are trying to fix. You're always working at your health. That's why they call it wellness. Wellness is always working every day at something. So to think positively for some people is very hard. But when you do it, it takes that stress off. Recognize your emotions. You know, recognize when you're in a state of fear, in a state of, you know, upset about something that happened at work. Recognize those emotions and then sort them out and say, you know, are these legitimate emotions, or are they emotions that I'm kind of making it a little bit worse than it already is, or I'm adding a story to it, stuff like that. So you want to recognize those emotions. And then when you do have these emotions, you want to express yourself appropriately. You know, you don't want to go and just start screaming at everybody, but you want to express yourself to the person that may be causing that stress. If it's a significant other, you want to sit down and talk with them. Not in an argument. You want to sit and say, you know, whatever happened the other day, it really affected me, and this is the reasons why, and I just want to let you know, blah, 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 and just talk it through. Because I know that may sound difficult, but it's really what will get you through this emotional state, and it'll give you better emotional health. And listen to your gut. Your gut actually tells you a lot. You know, we don't have this owner's manual that comes with our body that says, when you feel this, it means this. So your body gives you these signals for a reason, So when you have when your gut is saying, like when you're trying to make a decision, say at work or something, you're trying to decide whether to stay in a job or to leave a job, and your gut, you just have this feeling like, man, I don't think it's the right thing for me, but then you're staying in it because you like the money or something like that. But in the long run, that's going to be more stressful to you and affect your health in a different way than if you were trying to get out of that job and try to find something that's more fitting for you. That make sense? So listen to that gut. And then communication is very key. You want to communicate any of the feelings that you have inside of you to the people in your life, whether they're a cause or not a cause. But when you bottle up feelings, it unfortunately causes that cycle to get worse and worse and worse. So when you go out there and you express yourself to that person, you communicate to that person, it's like taking that weight of the world off your shoulders, and all of a sudden you can breathe now. And, you know, we just talked about it before, be aware and remove any of those food sensitivities. Because you could just making this cycle worse and worse and worse every day that you eat that food that you're sensitive to. And there's specific tests out there. You can do blood tests, you can do stool tests to find out if you're sensitive to certain foods. My biggest, you know, recommendation for people that don't want to spend money on any type of special testing is remove the food and see how you start to feel. And then put that food back in and see how you feel. And if you start to feel better when you're not on that food, then you know that your body's sensitive to that in some way. And then don't stress the small stuff. Sometimes we're not very thankful for what we have in our life. You know, we start to stress all the things that don't matter. So we may have a home, you know, over our head. We may have family that loves us. You know, we may have all this stuff, but then, you know, say something at work or something at school is not going right. We start to stress the thing at work or school, and then we just start to forget all the great things in our life. So being gracious and having gratitude for the things in your life will really help you in that emotional state, instead of stressing the small things. And maybe to you that small thing is huge, but if you line it up in like the priority list, I bet you it's not as big as you're making it. So that is our topic for today. It was a little bit shorter than normal, but I figured we can get a lot of this in. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the talk? About any information you have for yourself, or no?
Sometimes you just need a good cry, too.
It's true. Yeah, that's why when we say express yourself, I mean, crying is a way of expressing yourself, and sometimes guys are afraid to let that tear out, but sometimes it's the thing that's needed to get you through whatever that problem is.
Why do we make up this story?
To believe it or not, it started when we were a little kid. You know, it usually starts, say, let's use an example. Let's say that you have a first grader that comes up to a mother or father and got a B on their test. And they're so happy. They say, Mommy, Daddy, look, I got a B. And they say, why didn't you get an A? Now, that person or that child thinks, well, I'm not good enough for my mother. I'm not good enough because I didn't get an A. So now that's their like default mode. They're like, whenever they can't do something, or whenever they have a stressful situation, they believe, oh, they're just not good enough. And that's how it starts. So it really starts when they're a young kid. It's something they said in their brain when they were young. The problem is if they said it when they're 5 years old, you can change the way that thought is when you're 20 or 30 or 40 years old and just make a new thought. So instead of saying you're not good enough, now you say you are good enough, and live your life to say you're good enough to do whatever you want.
But that's hard to do.
It is
I'll
hard.
tell you, because I have tried this for at least a year and a half. Really, seriously, a conscious effort. Because I used to say, okay, I'm just going to use my personal life as an example. I used to say, Alex doesn't work. Like when he doesn't work, I'd say, I'm broke because Alex doesn't work. But the point was really, Alex doesn't work and I'm broke. So you try to correct both problems, but it's really hard.
easy to stay. It's actually easy to stay unhealthy than it is to stay healthy. I mean, it's so easy to go get that meal that you're not supposed to have, or order in that, pizza or that Chinese food, or don't go to the gym and go, watch TV. It's easier to be unhealthy than it is to be healthy.
But Doreen mentioned age. Is there a difference
There
based
is
on age?
in mentality or physically, there is not a difference. But the way that we think about it could be different. So like, you may think it's hard, but really, physically, it's not any harder than, a 20-year-old. It's just the way that you have to change your actions. So if your actions were always, bringing up the negative stuff, you want to change those actions to start bringing up more positive stuff. So it's not just a mentality, it's a mentality plus the action steps after that. That's what the hard part is.
That's the hard part. But I mean, it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that doesn't happen, but you have to really be conscious of it.
Yeah,
Really conscious of it.
absolutely. Any other questions or comments? So our next topic is on February 20th, which is in 2 weeks, hence the every other week of Wednesdays. And we're going to be talking about chronic pain, how to kick your chronic pain. And
What is chronic pain?
chronic pain means that pain that you've had for many, many years and you can't get rid of it. We have two types of illnesses in the world. We have acute pain, which means that it's anything under 90 days. And then we have chronic pain, where it's anything that's been lasting for 90 days or more. So chronic pain is something that just you can't get rid of, and it's always there, and no matter what you've tried, you can't figure out what the heck's going on. That's more of a chronic symptom, where an acute symptom is something that's more temporary and goes away after a while. So that will be in 2 weeks, and it's definitely going to be more than you think it's going to be. We're going to talk about many things you probably didn't even think that could be causing pain. So it's going to be cool. It's not just going to be about you have some pain, you hurt yourself, how are you going to fix it? It's really going to be about where does pain come from, what part of the brain controls it, how different changes in neurological function can make us more sensitive to pain. It's going to be pretty cool. So if you guys don't have any more questions, we are finished for today.
Well, it was very